Everyone's talking about inflation, GDP, and interest rates, but what actually is money? Why does it lose value, and who decides what it's worth? Today, I'm going to break down the entire world of economics, from how money is created to why recessions happen, in the simplest, clearest way you've ever heard. So, everything in economics starts with one word: scarcity. We all want more food, bigger houses, faster cars, better lives. But the resources to make these things, land, labor, and capital, are limited. So economics is the study of how we use limited resources to satisfy unlimited wants. Every government policy, every business decision, every personal budget, they're all attempts to solve this impossible puzzle. Since we can't have everything, we make choices, and every choice has a cost, not just money, but what we give up by choosing one thing over another. That's called opportunity cost. If you spend £30 going out tonight, the opportunity cost might be the £30 you could have invested or saved for your holiday. Every decision from your morning coffee to national tax policy carries an unseen trade-off. Now, humans realized early on that if we specialize, we produce more together than we could ever do alone. You might be great at making bread. I might be great at making shoes. If we trade, we both win. And that's how markets were born. Markets are simply places, physical or digital, where buyers and sellers exchange goods and services. And when money entered the picture, things exploded. Money replaced barter. It became the medium of exchange, the unit of account, and the store of value. So in plain English, it lets us trade easily. It lets us measure what things are worth, and it lets us save for later. Money itself has no value. It's paper or it's pixels, but it does represent trust. As long as we believe it has value, it does. Markets work because of one simple rule. People respond to incentives. If prices rise, sellers produce more. If prices fall, buyers buy more. This dance between supply and demand sets the equilibrium price, the sweet spot where everyone who wants to buy can buy and everyone who wants to sell can sell. This idea was first captured by Adam Smith in 1776 in The Wealth of Nations. He called it the invisible hand, the unseen force that coordinates millions of individual choices into a functioning economy. When people act in their own interest, buying, selling, saving, investing, they unintentionally create order. But Smith also warned that this system only works when people play fair, when property rights are protected and fraud is punished. That's where government comes in, to enforce the rules of the game, not to play it. So where does wealth come from? For most of history, wealth came from the land, how much you could farm, mine, or conquer. Then came the Industrial Revolution, and something magical happened. We learned to create wealth, not just find it. Machines multiplied human productivity, and suddenly the same person could make 10 times more goods in the same time. That's productivity, producing more output from the same input. And it's the single biggest reason some countries are rich and others are poor. When productivity rises, living standards rise. When it stagnates, economies stall, which is part of what's gone wrong in the UK in recent decades. But we'll come back to that. We measure a nation's output with GDP, gross domestic product. That's the total value of everything produced within a country in a year. Economists calculate it using the following formula. GDP equals C plus I plus G plus brackets X minus M, brackets closed. That's C equals consumer spending, I equals business investment, G equals government spending, and X minus M equals exports minus imports. When GDP rises, the economy is expanding. When it falls for 2 quarters, that's what we call a recession. But GDP isn't everything. It doesn't measure happiness, environmental damage, or inequality. A company can have high GDP and still have millions struggling, as we see in modern Britain, where London booms while much of the north is left behind. Economies unfortunately don't grow in straight lines. They move in cycles. When confidence is high, people spend more, businesses invest, and growth accelerates. Eventually demand overheats, prices rise, that's inflation, and central banks raise interest rates to cool things down. Spending slows, companies cut jobs, and the economy contracts. Then to avoid collapse, central banks cut rates again to encourage borrowing and spending. That up and down rhythm, boom, bust, recovery, boom again, is the heartbeat of capitalism. But sometimes the cycle spins out of control, like in the 1930s Great Depression or the 2008 financial crash. And that's when governments step in. Two names change modern economics: John Maynard Keynes and Milton Friedman. Keynes believed the economy isn't self-correcting. When people stop spending, businesses stop hiring, creating a downward spiral. His solution? Government should step in, spend when others won't. That's fiscal policy, using public spending and tax cuts to boost demand. Friedman disagreed. He believed too much government interference caused instability. For him, the key was controlling the money supply, not spending, and that's monetary policy, using interest rates and money created to steer the economy. In practice, modern economies use both. Central banks adjust rates and governments adjust spending, but both have limits, as the UK learned after years of money printing, high debt and stubborn inflation. Let's make this simple. Inflation happens when too much money chases too few goods. A little inflation is healthy, it keeps the economy moving, but too much and your money loses value faster than you can earn it. Central banks fight inflation by raising interest rates, making borrowing more expensive so people spend less and save more. Lower rates do the opposite. They encourage spending and investment, but can inflate bubbles like housing or tech stocks. Governments, meanwhile, run on debt. When they spend more than they tax, they borrow the difference by issuing bonds. That's why the UK, like most countries, carries massive national debt, over £2.7 trillion today. Debt itself isn't bad if it funds productive investments like infrastructure or education, but when it's used to fund short-term consumption or political giveaways, it becomes a ticking time bomb. No country can make everything efficiently, which is why we trade. Comparative advantage means each nation should produce what it's best at relative to others and trade for the rest. That's why we buy electronics from Asia, wine from France, and sell financial services from London. But globalization has winners and losers. It makes products cheaper and lifted billions out of poverty. But it's also hollowed out manufacturing jobs in developed countries, including the UK. Currencies move with trade too. When demand for British goods falls, so does the pound. When investors fear instability, they move money to safer currencies, like the US dollar. This flow of capital constantly reshapes the global economy and explains why UK imports feel more expensive when the pound drops. Traditional economics assumes we're logical, that we always make the best decision. But humans are emotional creatures. We overvalue short-term pleasure, fear losses more than we enjoy gains, and follow the crowd even when it's wrong. That's where behavioral economics comes in. It studies why we don't act rationally, why we take on debt for instant gratification, why we panic sell stocks, and why we ignore pensions until we're 50. These insights help design systems that nudge people towards better choices, like auto-enrolled pensions or default saving plans. Economic theory sounds neat on paper, but in practice, not everyone benefits equally. As we saw in the UK's divided kingdom, decades of policy tilted towards finance, and London created deep regional inequality. When manufacturing collapsed, millions lost stable jobs that once built the middle class. Service jobs replaced them, but often with lower pay and weaker security. The challenge now isn't just growth, it's inclusive growth. That means investing in education, infrastructure, and innovation outside of London. Because when an economy relies on one sector or one region, it becomes fragile, which is exactly what the UK is today. Money itself is evolving. For centuries, it was gold, then paper, then numbers on a screen. Now we're entering the era of digital money, from contactless payments to cryptocurrencies to central bank digital currencies. Bitcoin introduced the idea of money without government, a decentralized system based purely on mathematics and trust in code. But whether that's the future or just speculative bubble remains to be seen. What's certain is the way money moves is changing faster than ever, and the people who understand that change will have a massive advantage. At its heart, economics isn't about numbers or graphs, it's about choices. How we use time, money, and resources to improve our lives individually or collectively. From Adam Smith's invisible hand to Keynes' government stimulus to modern behavioural nudges, every school of thought is just a different attempt to answer three timeless questions. What should we produce? How should we produce it? And who gets what? No system, capitalism, socialism, or anything in between has ever solved this perfectly. But understanding how these systems work gives you power. The power to make smarter financial decisions, to question political narratives, and to build real wealth in your own life. Because economics isn't just about countries, it's about you. If you found this breakdown helpful and want to finally understand how to build wealth in the real world, hit subscribe. I'm a chartered accountant and I make complex financial topics simple so you can make smarter decisions with your money. You can also download my free UK retirement calculator in the description below, because understanding money is the first step to mastering it.